Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 28 of Down on the Corner, the flagship show of KINER'S I'm your host, Mark Roseman, and tonight promises to be an exceptional evening as we have the distinct pleasure of being joined by one of the most underrated New York Mets pitcher in their history. His baseball records are one of the best examples of why one-loss records may not be the best way to measure a pitcher's effort. He was a three-time All-Star, was named 1972 National League Rookie of the Year. Additionally, he was a member of the 1973 National League pennant-winning New York Mets team. He led the National League in shutouts in 1974 and 1975. He ranks in the top 10 among Mets pitchers in wins, complete games, ERA, strikeouts, shutouts, and innings pitched. In 2020, he was inducted to the New York Mets Hall of Fame. It is a pleasure to welcome John Matlack to the corner. Welcome, John.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be here.
Awesome to have you. And just a quick reminder for those of you new to our Zoom room show, I'll kick off the discussion with John to get the ball rolling. We ask all people that are in the Zoom room right now to keep yourselves muted during this segment. However, once we open the floor, you guys will be able to basically use the raise hand function or just raise your hand the old school way, and you'll be able to ask questions. So, I remember speaking to you a while ago when we were doing the Mets first book, and you talked about Sandy Koufax being your boyhood idol. And I was wondering if there was a reason over and above him being a lefty. You know, obviously there were a lot of great lefties in the game back then. Why was Sandy the guy that you idolized?
I think first and foremost probably was the fact that we were both left-handed. Also, I didn't have quite the same windup, but I liked his high leg kick, slightly different than mine, but still both high leg kicks. And the guy had a lot of success. It was somebody I emulated. I wanted to be like him.
The interesting thing is you also told a pretty unique story that looked like you were going to get the opportunity to see Sandy Koufax pitch in the World Series in 1966, but that didn't happen. Can you share why?
Well, the doggone guys won in 4 games. He was scheduled to pitch game 5. And our baseball coach on the high school team had somehow finagled tickets to game 5 in Baltimore if there was going to be one. And I guess he was going to be the pitcher. And I was all excited to get to see that. And it never happened.
The Mets used their first pick in 1967, the amateur draft. It was the 4th overall in all of baseball to choose you. Now, granted, you know, the media coverage back then isn't what it is today. You know, a lot of people didn't know about all these prospects, but I have to imagine being chosen 4th overall comes with a lot of expectations. Did you feel any pressure, you know, to justify the Mets' faith in you with the number 4 overall pick, that you needed to get to the majors quickly, or did it not even enter your mind?
Really never entered my mind. I was just a 17-year-old high school kid who had dreams of becoming a professional, was pretty much astounded when I was picked where I was picked, and figured that as a 17-year-old right out of high school, it was going to take me a little schooling in order to be able to get where I needed to go. And fortunately, the Mets gave me the opportunity to get that schooling.
So this year in spring training, the Mets had a lot of really young players in spring training and camp. You're 19 years old when you participated in your first spring training camp, which came in 1969. Obviously, the amazing Mets. What was your takeaway from being in camp for a team that went on to win the World Series?
It made it all real. Being there at Al Lang for the opening game, Mets and Cardinals, Gibson, and AG had been traded to us. He was getting his first at bat as leadoff hitter, center fielder. It made it all real. It was no longer something I dreamed about. I was sitting there in the dugout watching it.
So what's going through your head as a 19-year-old seeing Seaver versus Gibson up close? You know, and I remember I think you might have told me you had only been to like 2 major league games before you actually made your major league debut as well.
Something like that. It wasn't very many, but no, the big takeaway from that day was the seriousness of the game, especially from a guy named Gibson. He literally hit AG in the head with the first pitch of the game. He collapsed in the box and the trainers were checking him out, and turns out he was addled, but okay. And as he's walking to first base with the trainer helping him down there, Gibson walked halfway to the first baseline and said, "Welcome to the National League." And I'm sitting there in the dugout going, where have I just gotten myself?
Wow. So tomorrow was supposed to be opening day for the Mets. Obviously, with the rain in the forecast, the Mets decided to call it today so people wouldn't have to worry about tomorrow, and opening day will be Friday. You were a July call-up in 1971. What were the differences in emotions being a call-up in July as opposed to next season making the team out of camp? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there was a difference. I think there was a lot more nerves in the call-up situation. I pitched the second game of a doubleheader in Cincinnati, and a day doubleheader, and the clubhouse guy there wanted to bill me for the carpet. He said I wore it out pacing back and forth during the first game. But yeah, it was a little bit more nerve-wracking, I think. Making the club was nerve-wracking in spring training, but once it was established that I'd actually made the club, it was just a little bit more relaxing at that point, and just had to get ready for the season.
So while you're with the Mets, there's a guy named Tom Seaver who basically gets the nod every time for opening day. But you were a three-time opening day starting pitcher for the Texas Rangers. What does getting the opening day assignment mean for a pitcher, and how is it different than starting game 2 or 3 of a season?
I don't know. I guess there's a certain amount of prestige that comes along with it. I don't know if it means a whole heck of a lot. Maybe you're going to get an extra start somewhere during the course of the season if you don't come up with an injury or a problem of some sort. Um, it means that you're somebody the club is counting on to get them off on the right foot.
Whenever I have the privilege and opportunity to talk to you, one of the things that comes through incredibly, uh, no matter when the conversation turns to, is your respect for Gil Hodges. What did he mean to you as a player, but more so as an individual?
Gil was a rare kind of a guy. He was scary to be around, but yet his door was always open if you had a question, or like we roll into Philly and I wanted to stay with my folks who lived 40 miles away. I could go in and ask permission. He said, sure, leave the number with Lunis, everything's fine. But if I saw him in the hotel lobby on the road, I'd go the other way rather than have to go by and say good morning. So it was really sort of strange that way. But I loved his baseball acumen. He seemed to be way ahead in the ball game. I can remember more than once him, while I was sitting on the bench watching the game, leaning down and hollering at somebody. A good example might be Kenny Boswell. Bosby, go get loose. I may need you to hit here. And 2 innings, 3 innings later, the situation would be right, and he'd substitute Bosby as a pinch hitter. And to be able to think that far ahead that this situation might occur and to be ready for it was really impressive.
1972, you win the Rookie of the Year, and I remember you telling me pretty much up until 2 weeks prior to the end of the season, you didn't even know that award existed. What did winning the Rookie of the Year mean to you?
Well, I guess I'm glad I found out about it 2 weeks ahead of the award being announced, because if I'd have known about it, I might have been a whole lot more worried and nervous and caused more problems. Who knows? It was a great accolade, no question. It was certainly, since I didn't know about it, nothing that I set out to win. But being recognized as the best rookie pitcher that year in the league was certainly something I was proud of.
I know that obviously in New York and any other market, winning Rookie of the Year or any award comes with some other duties that you have to do. And one of them, I'll never forget this, is in 1973, prior to our Little League starting, you were the guest of honor then. And I'll never forget this. I actually have it somewhere. The Sporting News article on you winning Rookie of the Year, signed by John Matlack, which I still cherish to this day. In New York, when you win something like that, what are some of the things that you have to do because of it, and what was it like for you that off season?
Well, it wasn't really that I had to do it because of it. It was something that I sort of fell into. I decided to stay there. We were going to buy a house, bought a house. The PR people said, we've got speaking engagements lined up through the fall and winter. Would you be interested? And I said, sure, I'll do a couple of those. And it's like $150 a pop or something like that. And you go and have rubber chicken and make a talk and present some trophies to the kids. And it was a lot of fun. But what I didn't realize, it was going to be damn near 7 days a week. They kept me really, really busy. I almost furnished our house from money made that winter.
Unbelievable. Now, obviously, our website is called KINER'S.com, and the reason is because myself and everyone that's on staff here still feel to this day it was the greatest post-game show in the history of TV. What are some of your memories of being on KINER'S Corner with Ralph?
It was always a pleasure. Ralph was a stand-up guy, always did it right. And I think the one time, I was on there several times, but the one time that I really remember was a day in July of 75. Might have been the second, I think. And I beat the Cubs. I forget now what the score was, 5-3, 7-3, something like that. And I'm on KINER'S Corner, and he's asking me about the game, and I'm him about childbirth because my son was born that day. So it was really sort of crazy. I had spent literally from about 4:30 in the morning that morning with my wife at the hospital, bought a box of cigars on the way to the ballpark, and then we proceeded to win a ball game. So it was quite a busy day.
Unbelievable. A win and an appearance on KINER'S Corner and the birth of your son. Not a bad day.
Not a bad day.
May 8th, 1973, you suffer your first injury. Marty Perez of Atlanta lined a shot that hit you in your forehead, fractured your skull during a game at Shea Stadium. You're carried off the field on a stretcher, if I remember correctly. And the initial fear was that your career might have been over. However, you end up pitching 11 days later, and obviously being a very important cog in that improbable run to the 1973 World Series. You ended up going 5-1 from August 18th to the end of the season, helping the Mets take that National League East division. What was going through your mind the first few days after that injury and the first time you took the hill after that injury?
Well, after the injury, I didn't know who Herb Score was until I picked up the paper the next day, and there's my picture and this guy I didn't recognize. I had to read the article and think, oh man, I hope that doesn't happen to me. So that gave me a little apprehension going forward. And I didn't really feel bad. I had a headache. I had a crazy brush burn on my forehead for a couple of days. When they let me out of the hospital and went home, some members of the press had tracked me down, and they were upset that there was no visual damage. Could we put a bandage on you? Could we sit you in a wheelchair? Could we give you an eye patch? And I wanted to run these guys over with my car, for crying out loud. But anyway, I get cleared by the doctor, and I joined the club on the road and ended up doing my side, feeling fine, and pitching against Pittsburgh. I think it was at home the next time I pitched. And my concern was how I would react if a ball was hitting my direction. Would I blink? Would I flinch? Would that be an issue? And no balls were hit directly at me, but there were several hit second base, shortstop, grounders, and there was no abnormal reaction whatsoever. I tracked the ball. I did what I needed to do. And I really put the episode behind me after that. It was purely an accident. And to this day, I tracked the ball all the way to the plate. I either get out of the way or I catch that line drive, one of the two. But I didn't see it. I lost track of the ball, overthrowing the pitch, and it cost me a hell of a headache. Cost me the ball game too, if I remember right.
Yeah, yes. It's very interesting because the Mets are pretty much synonymous with great pitching. And we've also gone through cycles where we thought we were going to have unbelievable pitching, going back to Generation K, or even just recently with, Matt Harvey and alike. I don't believe the 1973 Mets pitching staff gets the credit it truly deserves. You take a look at it. That Mets staff had 4 guys that made 20 or more starts in 73. Each of them finished with an ERA at 3.20 or lower. Tom Seaver was the leader at 2.08, Stone at 2.80, Kuzman at 2.84, you at 3.20. The 73 Mets did something I'm not sure any team will ever do again. They literally, the pitching staff was carried on the backs of the 4 starters. A lot had to do with injuries to your key players, but the Met offense only had 4 guys with 100 or more hits. So no disrespect meant to the 1969 Mets, but 1973 really might have been the miracle. What was your when you think back on that, what are your recollections? What do you remember most about that season?
Probably what Brody said to me the year before, it really came true. And it was the beginning of one of the ball games early in the year, and I don't remember which one exactly, but he came out to the mound for a little chat before the game started after warmups and asked me if I was nervous or what. I said, yeah, I'm a little fidgety. He said, well, don't worry about a thing. He said, don't give them anything and I'll guarantee you a tie. And he turned around and went back to home plate. And how true that was.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was something that generated, I think, quality pitching, because we sort of knew that we wanted to have a run on the board and hold on to it, protect it as best we could. And you pitched with that mentality. I think it made guys a lot sharper. I think it made the focus a lot keener. And if I was pitching for a team that had an offense averaging 5, 6 runs a game, I don't know that focus would be as keen, because you knew you had a little room to work.
I remember also, I mean, you guys were competitive with among yourselves, whether it be for pitching,
Oh,
also
yeah.
hitting. How much did the makeup of that staff also drive you guys to excel like that?
Well, it did. There was a little personal thing between Seaver and Kuzi and I about pitching and about who got the most hits. And it ultimately ended up one of us buying dinner for the other two, depending on how the thing worked out. But so there was certainly some friendly competition there. But on the other hand, they were both tremendously supportive. I tried to be for them whenever there was information I might add. But, Tommy helped fuel my mental side and how to take care of myself, what kind of sleep to get, when, how to eat, train. Kuzi helped tremendously with pitch sequencing, different sequences and things to try with varying hitters. It was a great world to grow up in.
You kind of opened the door, and I wasn't going to even go there, but I gotta share this with you. So I am in a Stratomatic baseball league, and we are playing. We drafted from the 1976 teams, and last night was the playoffs. And game 2, my team had you pitching against Tom Seaver in a best-of-3. We won the first game. John Montefusco beat John Candelaria, and you had pitched 2 consecutive shutouts for us, and you didn't win the second game. I wasn't going to bring it up, but because you said that you had the competition with Seaver, I got to say it. But all things are good because Gaylord Perry won game 3 for us. So we move on to the semifinals.
Glad to hear.
But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. After you retired as an active player, you spent 4 years away from the game. You're hired as a pitching coach for the Padres, the Arizona League affiliate. You also coached the White Sox organization and in the Tigers organization. Minor league pitching coordinator as well. Astros, a couple other stops. So a couple of things. From the time you were coaching, from the time you were coached by Rube Walker to the time you became a coach, how much has had technology changed? How much had the thought process for pitchers changed? And since you've been out of the game to now, how has it changed as well?
Oh boy, is that open-ended. It changed somewhat from playing days to coaching days. There was a lot more emphasis put on tracking amount of pitches, amount of work, types of pitches that guys threw, what percentages of those pitches during the course of their outing, breakdown of pitches, if you will. The higher technology used today was just coming in when I got out of the coaching end of things. And I think it's even, they've got down to the amount of spin on the ball and what it's going to do to it and all that kind of stuff. It's way, way more information, I think, than is even needed. But hey, everything evolves, and they'll look back on this in years down the road and think it was the Stone Age of baseball, like these guys today think of us. So it's progress. That's what it is. And you either adapt or it leaves you behind. I guess I didn't adapt fast enough because I wasn't quite ready to quit coaching, but they left me behind.
That being said, How do you think John Matlack would fare in today's game as a pitcher?
I think I'd probably do fine. I don't know how you would compare it. I would certainly pitch differently than the guys today are pitching. Uh, Probably would not utilize the game plan, if you will, that I see starts out from pitch one. By the time the guys through the first inning, you almost always have seen their entire repertoire. And I pitched numerous games where I didn't even break out the curveball till the fifth or sixth inning. And back before I hurt my elbow, I was only 2 pitch pitchers. That's doing a lot with the fastball, and that's because it moved one way or the other way, depending on how I held it. And the ability to command the strike zone, the ability to make a hitter off stride, out of balance, if you will, through sequencing or intimidation, or location, or all of it, is sort of a lost art. You know, the Greg Maddoxes would not find a place in today's game. They wouldn't
Right.
even get out of a tryout camp. And it's unfortunate because I think there's probably a lot of quality pitchers that can generate outs for you, pitch deep into ball games for you, and they're not even getting an opportunity because they don't have that plus stuff or that nasty pitch.
How much do you think, the fact that these guys have to have that velocity, that plus fastball, weighs into the fact that there's just a rash of all these Tommy John surgeries, elbow, blowing out, just so many injuries where you guys, everyone would be penciled in for 200 plus innings. You say deep into games. 6 innings is a quality start now. There's no more complete games. You take a look at the 1968 to 1972 baseball cards, the complete game, staffs don't even have the amount that one pitcher had back in the day. Do you attribute some of these injuries to that?
I think the quest for velocity or that specialty pitch has definitely driven the injuries through the roof. Guys are developing the muscles or the tendons, or one faster than the other. It isn't done favorably to the body, let's say that. I had a saying that I used a lot when I was coaching with the kids. The human body will do almost anything you ask of it, assuming you ask it nicely. And sometimes I think today's athletes are asking it pretty harshly to do what they want it to do. And it says, hey, I'm not ready for this. And it blows up.
Lastly, before I turn it over to the Zoom room, obviously Friday is opening day. Today Mets had their workouts. I was there, and everyone's always optimistic on opening day. You had 13 seasons, 12 of which you broke, camp with opening day. Every season when you broke camp, no matter what the talent was on that team, did you genuinely, honestly believe that your team had a shot on opening day if things went your way? And how long does that feeling last sometimes when you're on a bad team?
I never ever looked at it in that way. I had more blinders on, I think. I was more concerned about being able to do the job that I was expected to do and what was my confidence level that I could accomplish that task. And if I stayed in my lane and did my job, the chips were going to fall where they would. You win some, you lose some get rained out. But if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm at least giving us a chance to go on down the road positively. And as long as I stayed focused on that, I felt like it's something I could accomplish. If I got too far afield, I got outside of what I was supposed to be doing. That's outside my pay grade. I didn't need to be messing over there.
All right, guys. It's one of my favorite parts of the show where I get to turn it over to you guys because you guys have been awesome and you come up with great questions. And I love to just sit back and just unmute you when you raise your hand. So as always, stay muted until I call on you.
This is the scary part.
Yeah, no, these guys are good. Trust me. And as always, keep it respectful. I don't even, it's show 28 and no one's ever been disrespectful. So I think I can lose that disclaimer. All right, Stevie, your hand is up since I saw tags. I saw yours is up too, but Stevie hasn't missed a show, so I'm gonna go with Stevie first. Go ahead, Stevie.
Awesome. Awesome. Hi, John. How are you?
Just fine, sir. How are you?
Great, great. So, going back to the NLCS in '73, and you pitch an unbelievable game against the Big Red Machine, a two-hitter. Obviously that tied up the series. For you and your mindset, were you able to celebrate that accomplishment, or was it okay, we need to now go and win another game?
Well, like anything else, I think you celebrate in the moment, and was very happy to be able to bring us back to even at 1-1. But the next day was back to business, and what's the next task at hand? And we need to win a couple more ball games. I wasn't going to be part of that, but I had to get ready for whatever was going to be next for me.
Fair. Hope you
All
come
right.
to camp. Love to see you there.
All right, Tags is back in his Shawshank Redemption room, so you can go.
How are you, First off, hope you all had a great winter. That's the first thing. Now, John, my question to you is this. The 73 World Series, Game 6, there's always that George Stone should have started. Had Gil Hodges been the manager, would that have happened? Thank you very much.
Lordy, I don't honestly know what would have happened there. I don't know if I can crawl inside of Gil's head there. I know there's been a lot of speculation afterwards about what would have been the correct course of action. There was no discussion that I was aware of at that time. I just was told, this is your ball game. Nobody said, what if we do this or what if we do that? Right. I feel sort of bad that Stoney didn't get the pitch simply because he had a hell of a year and probably deserved that opportunity. But by the same token, if you'd have asked me, I wouldn't have said, okay, Stoney, here's the ball, go do it. I'm going to take it and go do it myself.
Right, exactly. But I mean, listen, you pitched great in that World Series, though. Game 1, game for you. You did. Your ERA was great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, listen, and we all love Felix. What are the chances of Felix making an error also? So,
well, let's not stop there. I still gave the double up to Holtzman after the error that let the run score. If I get him out, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the 73 team and 72, 72, you're a rookie. What's it like for a rookie to be on the same team as, an absolute legend in Willie Mays?
Yeah, it was intimidating and fun all at the same time. He was like my surrogate father. He was the old man of the club. I was the young man of the club, and he sort of had a special eye to make sure that I knew that he was watching, and if we were out somewhere or didn't even have to be that, it could be at home, and he's, you get home, get your rest tonight, you're pitching tomorrow or whatever it was. He always had a good word, kind word to say, and was a great guy to have in the clubhouse.
Okay, Michael went using technology properly. He raised his hand, so go ahead, Michael.
Hi, John. How are you?
Just fine. How's it going?
All right. I'm going to go a little Mark Rosenman on you here.
Uh-oh.
And so I looked up the stats for 1974, and you were 14 and 16. I'm sorry, 13 and 15 with a 2.41 ERA, which tells me that you were durable, and B, the Mets weren't scoring runs for you. Was there ever a feeling that you had that you kind of got pissed off when you came out of a game? Sorry if I'm offending anybody, because they didn't score runs for you, and maybe you lost a 1-0 or a 2-0.
I lost one time. There were a stretch of 8 games where I think the game was decided by 1 run, and I didn't give up more than 2 in the ball game. And I did not win any of those. Only lost a couple, but I didn't win any of them. It was frustrating on one hand, but I looked at it a little bit differently. Always did, which was my job was to keep us in the ball game. I'm not in charge of the offense unless it's to advance a runner with a bunt or something like that. So if I can keep us in the ball game and give us that opportunity to win, I feel like I've done my job. Now, I'd love to have 3 or 4 runs on the board every time I went out there, but it just didn't work that way. And I think it ultimately made me a better pitcher because it really heightened the focus and concentration that you wanted a 0 on the board every inning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Just so you know, John, my co-manager, Howie Fine, is now in the room, and he actually missed me talking about our game 2 playoff. But he said, if I tell you that, you'll never come back again. And I said, it's Stratomatic. He'll come back in. All right. I think, Robbie, you manually raised your hand. So go ahead, unmute Robbie, and go ahead. You got to unmute, Robbie.
I don't have a question.
There you go. Okay.
I can't tell you. This is a dream. An ultimate dream of mine to see John, but to actually get it, let him know how I became a Mets fan. Here I am, 4 years old, born in '68, and I didn't. I enjoyed the game, and I learned that John was born on January 19th, and that's a very special day in my family. My brother was born on the 19th, and it was also my parents' wedding anniversary. So when I find out, that's it. Nothing to say again. You know, from that point on, I've been a diehard Mets fan, and that's enough. You know, I get to see John get inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Mets Hall of Fame. You know, I'm trying to yell down on the field, and he's not moving his head. He's not saying anything to me. You know, and you know, I'm trying to explain. You know, it's been all this time, and we get to go together. And, you know, why aren't you looking at me? So here I am, you know, I feel like you're right next to me. And it's beyond special, just beyond special. I've got a jersey that I get to wear countless times at the stadium. A few people are tapping me on the shoulder, you know, mentioning how beautiful to have a shirt, to have a jersey with John's number and name on it, and it's beyond beautiful. And lastly, what I want to say is, you know, the Mets could use a lefty. So John, if you want to, you know, come out of retirement, you know, just think about it at least.
I'll certainly consider, but there's one problem there. The mind might be willing, but the body says, "Oh no, you don't."
Well, I am beyond blessed to have had this opportunity. Thank you,
Robbie.
Appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Very kind.
Absolutely, Robbie. Thanks for sharing that with us. Mark, go ahead, unmute and go.
How you doing, John? It's a pleasure to talk to you. I guess the question I had was leaving the Mets. I mean, at that time, did you feel it was time? I know there's rumors maybe that Joe Torre was responsible for that move, and you know, that you were upset that the team wasn't working on the offense and there wasn't support. So just wondering what your feeling was at that time. Was it were you ready to move on, and you know, just get your input on that? I was just curious because obviously we didn't want to see you go.
Was totally shocked when I got the call that I had been traded, and it involved 4 teams and 11 players, and I can't even recite it for you today. But no, I did not want to go anywhere. Had made some comments in the press, and I think they may have been misconstrued. I was trying to voice my concern that we needed to do something about the offense. We had pitching and defense. We needed to generate some more offense. And I guess people took that to mean that I might be a little disconcerted or might want to go somewhere else, because I did hear that mentioned other places later on. But no, I was shocked. And if you had asked me that night, I could not have named one Texas Ranger. I had no idea who was on that ball club. I was so focused on being a Met and in the National League and what I was doing that I had no idea what was going on in the other one.
What was that transition like to Texas, going from New York to Texas, from one league to the other back in the day when, there was no interleague play?
Yeah, it was different. The strike zone was different. The low strike that was prevalent in the National League was not so in the American League. I think initially they still were wearing the outside chest protectors. That changed pretty quickly, though. Was much hotter in Arlington, Texas than it was in New York. So I had to get acclimatized to that a little bit. And instead of having to wear a coat and tie every time we went on the road, it was blue jeans and boots. So it was a little bit of a different world.
Nice. All right, Sal, you using technology, using the raise hand function. So I got a call on you. Go ahead, Chico.
Hey, John, nice to meet you. Actually, we met a couple of years ago. You had been at Hofstra doing a card show. I guess it was your first one in New York, and you were
Oh, look at that.
these for me. Next time you're going to do it, I'm going to have you sign one of these. Look at that
Oh, look at that.
Whoa.
looking youngster over there, huh?
Who was ever that young?
That's for sure. I have a question for you. Game 2 of the NLCS, you pitched great. Two-hitter, great. After the game, Bud Harrelson said that Matlack made the Reds look like me. Next day, we know what happened. What was up with the fight, and what was going on the bench when, Pete Rose outweighed him by about 40 pounds, maybe more. So what was that like?
I think Rose took offense at the comment, and come to find out after the fact that it got talked about quite a little bit in their clubhouse. Of course, I was unaware of that, and I guess we were unaware of that. So when he went hard into second, and that's something that Buddy had experienced most of the year, and he's not that big of a guy. Was not that big of a guy, and I think maybe it just was enough to tip things over the edge and make him snap, because I don't think I've ever seen him that irate for that instant, and then all hell breaks loose. So it was just one of those things that developed.
And did you guys, everybody's out on the field. Who were you matched up with on there?
There was no matchup. Unfortunately, I was coming down the tunnel when it all happened.
Good man.
So I was late. I was late on the field, and I got blamed for blindsiding Pete when he was down in the pile. And of course, I hadn't even made it on the field yet, so I don't know how he came up with that one. But the aftermath, I got to see some of it where Bourbon took a bite out of Buzz Capper's hat and all that kind of mess. It was sort of crazy.
Are you going to be doing
What?
the shows here? The card shows?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to be doing any more of the card shows?
I don't know. Home is now Houston, Texas for me, and I don't get back in that neck of the woods that often.
Well, hope we see you maybe at the National in Cleveland this year. That'd be
Already.
Cool.
You get to take in a lot of Astro games?
I have not. I am more of a doer than a watcher. I watch when it gets down to playoff time. I tend to watch on the computer. There's still a few guys that I had the privilege of coaching with, playing and in other coaching jobs. And I sort of keep track of them on MLB.com in the morning and see who's done what and follow that way. But I don't watch too much of it on the television, unless maybe it's on mute, because I have trouble listening to some of these guys.
You and I both. So who are some of the pitchers that you work with that are still around in the league that you're keeping tabs on?
Well, Verlander came through Detroit. Scherzer was in Detroit for a little while. Drew Smiley was a Detroit product. There's a few of them still kicking around. Not a lot anymore, but several. We had pretty good development system going there for a few years, and Dave Dombrowski, nothing against him, but he traded 43 guys that I counted that came through our system that weren't at the time big leaguers, but became big leaguers.
Anybody else in the Zoom room have any questions before we let him go? Michael, go ahead. Unmute.
Yeah, hi, John. True pleasure. And growing up, that 73 team was really my wheelhouse. That really connected me to sports. And you were my guy. I mean, people at Seaver, McGraw, Kuzman, but you were my guy. Forget Seaver leaving. When you left to go to Texas, I was devastated. So this is a true pleasure. Remember the All-Star game, right? Didn't you win it with Bill Matlack? And that was
Yes.
such a unique thing that happened. So I kind of followed your career in my wheelhouse. So just, I guess it wasn't the 72 with the 73 series against the Reds. Anything stand out from your time with the Mets? Kind of, you guys didn't win it all, so right. So there's no championship, but anything else that really you carry to today, a memory, a thought, a friendship, anything that you took away from New York?
Well, just the whole experience. I was probably more National League attuned, playing wise. I like the National League game better without the DH and the pitcher hitting and the strategy involved because of that situation. So I think that those years with the Mets are probably far more special than my time in Texas, although I enjoyed that as well, just in a different way. But if I had to pick a favorite spot, it would be there. And that style of play was, I think, and still is far better than the DH gives people extra time and all that. I understand the offense and all that, but man, it takes away so much managerial strategy that I think it spoiled the game a little bit.
Great. Hey, great. So, thanks again. Appreciate it.
So one of the things we really didn't touch on, and I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been a book like totally dedicated to just this portion of the end of Gil Hodges' life. How much psychologically did the death of Gil Hodges have on the team? And and then you go from Gil to Yogi. You couldn't have more polar opposites when you talk about demeanor and just seriousness to Yogi. What was that like?
Probably it was more devastating, if that's the word to use, with some of the other guys that had been there 69, 70, 71 and had more history with Gil. It was a total shock and devastating to everyone, as it was to me immediately. But I mean, Yogi had been a coach. I knew Yogi. I was comfortable with Yogi a lot more so probably than with Gil. So when he became manager, it was a fairly easy transition for me because I didn't have the history with Gil that the other guys did.
All right. Anybody else in the Zoom room have a question? No. Oh, all right. Tags, go ahead. You good?
Yeah. Well, one more. M. Donald Grant. What was your relation? What wasn't too positive with a lot of the players, but what was your experience with him? Thanks.
I didn't have a real relationship with him other than to be introduced from time to time and see him when he come through the clubhouse for a meeting. He was, the big boss that wore the three-piece suit and stayed upstairs. That's pretty much the way they did it back then. I do think after the fact, I learned more about it, that he had with Dick Young a lot to do with Seaver leaving, which may have opened the door for then me leaving and then Kuzi leaving after that. So it was all part of that process. And I don't know. What I most remember, I guess, about him is that he would be there for the meeting when they read the no gambling deal every year that was required by the league.
All right. Thank you.
All right, John, we appreciate your time. As always, you're always generous with your time, and I really appreciate it. Hope you had fun. That's what this is about. Yeah, good. All right, I'm so happy you joined us tonight. Thanks so much.
My pleasure, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
All right, guys, if you want to stick around, we'll talk a little Met baseball before we sign off, and just some thoughts on where we're going this season and how things are looking. So today I had the pleasure of being out there for it was the workout day, and we did have a little media availability with Lindor, Quintana, and Diaz, as well as Carlos Mendoza. And I will say this, and I said this last week, and you guys who have followed this show all 26 episodes last year know how much I really respect Buck Showalter and the job he did and his knowledge of baseball. I will say this: there is a different feel, a different vibe around the team. They're much more relaxed, and I don't listen. They won 101 games, so I don't believe they were tense under Buck. I'm not saying that's the thing, but I will. There are other factors. Buck won 101 games, didn't make it past the playoffs. Buck knew this is his last shot at winning his elusive World Series. That next year he might have been a little more tighter and more stricter. He's always been a micromanager, and he's won being a micromanager, but maybe seeing like, all right, now I have Verlander and I have these other tools. I got to get this done. And it might have caused some tension among the players, like not consciously, but subconsciously. Everyone seems more relaxed. That's number one. Number two, I asked these players all season long last year because I thought it might have been a factor. The fact that Eric Chavez was moved from hitting coach to bench coach, there was a different approach at the plate. They weren't as patient. They weren't going the other way. They weren't doing the things they were doing with a 101 win season. Eric Chavez is now back as the hitting coach. The acquisition of the signing of JD Martinez makes that lineup extremely long. It is a good lineup. Say what you will, it's amazing what a difference a year makes. Last year with Batty and Vientos lighting up spring training. Oh, you can't send these kids down. They got to be on the team. Bench Escobar, bring these kids up. Listen, there's going to be a learning curve with these kids. Vientos, Batty, they didn't achieve what we thought they would achieve last year. Now Vientos is going to have to figure out in the minor leagues, and baseball always has a way of figuring these things out for themselves. Somewhere along the line, someone gets injured, some guy comes in, and then all of a sudden he steals his position. So I'm not worried about Vientos. He will be back here at some point, or unfortunately, he might be traded. But Batty had an awful spring training this year. Okay, last year had a great spring training. Sometimes they don't correlate to each other. That being said, I believe that they are good enough to contend for a wild card spot with a big if. And the if is their pitchers all have to be, don't have to be great. They just have to keep them in games, because I believe their bullpen, first of all, Diaz makes their bullpen better right off the bat. All right. We didn't have that last year. Ottavino, again, hopefully he's going to be able to hold runners on, but they have pieces in that bullpen. They have different looks. So if the starting pitching is a shade over mediocre, I think we'll score runs this year. I think the defense is much better. Bader and Nimmo was a great defender, but Bader is an elite defender. A healthy Marte. Marte was not healthy. You saw it in the beginning. The first couple of balls he went off after, the ones that he normally goes full out speed against the wall and catches, he was pulling up like 15 feet before the foul line last year in the beginning of the season. You knew something was wrong. He's healthy this year. Again, but they're in the division with the Braves and the Phillies. It's going to be tough. But I want to throw it out to you guys. How, sometimes not having the expectations is a good thing. Maybe this year we have a little fun, where last year with all those expectations and that early, horrible series in Detroit where Verlander, pitches a great game but loses 2-1, and then the next day they get killed, in the Brewers series where the young kids were just going yard after yard. You had those expectations, and all of a sudden you go on that losing streak, and then just the air and everything went out. So I'll turn it over to you guys. If you want to raise your hand to go first so we don't talk over each other, we can do that. All right, Steve, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to, first of all, credit you. You said it last spring training. You were saying there's something about the vibe here that doesn't feel quite right. And that you couldn't put your finger on it, and made some comments about players that you were like, I don't know about this guy, and that it's not going to happen. So, I mean,
yet that guy did have a good season, but he has now found himself he made a World Series, but he also has found himself without a job. So there might be, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, overall, I agree. I think, and I've said it in a couple of chats, law of averages, just based on how that lineup did last year, it's got to be better. It's definitely a lot better than what it was last year. And if they can be, you know, three-quarters of what they were in 2022, this team will compete.
I agree. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of keys here. I think McNeil has to stay within himself. I think if he stays within himself and is that guy that can hit to all fields, he can set the table for the guys that are coming, for Alonso and JD Martinez. If he gets into that, if he gets enamored of the home run ball again, I think there'll be a problem. Marte defensively, I mean, you saw him this spring throw a runner out at third on the fly. I'm not worried about Marte on the field, but he also is another one. The Mets will go as far as I think those two players go. And as far as the bullpen goes, I kind of would have liked to have seen Robertson, them going after Robertson. I still never got to see the Ottavino, Robertson, and then Diaz trio pitching for the Mets. Not as big a deal because I think they still have some good horses in the bullpen, but I think that would have been, to me, a good thing to see. And the other frustration that I have, and I bring it up all the time, is Lucchesi can't crack that lineup, that rotation at all. And I guess it's because he has options. I mean,
I agree. A guy comes up, he doesn't lose up here. He's liked in the clubhouse. But listen, what I will say about this, and I kind of did a deeper dive, like obviously, we're Met fans, but we follow baseball. But listen, I'm not a big rotisserie guy, so I'm not looking at every single guy's stats. But if you look historically at the Milwaukee Brewers, if you looked, opening day roster from the time Stearns was there, every single year, you'd probably pick 5 or 6 pitchers that you never heard of that all did well. The guy is a top-notch talent evaluator. So you got to give him a shot. Listen, I liked what Billy Epler did. I think at the time where Billy was and where we were, those were the right moves. And I think, listen, I think that 5 years from now, just like, we all, like, I won't say we all, a number of people trash Sandy Alderson, and this and that. But if you took a look at that, the team that made the World Series, Lucas Studa, all these guys that were on the field, 2015. Yeah, it was 15, right? I'm trying to think of it. But all the guys at each position were pretty much either Sandy Alderson draft picks or acquisitions. But then all of a sudden, Sandy was an idiot. You're going to take a look at 5 years from now when this cachet of talent that was acquired because of the free agents that he signed and then was able to flip is going to be remarkable. You're going to say, oh, that guy came in this trade. I mean, to me, one of the greatest connections ever, though. I mean, and I love it. And I'll throw it out there to you guys. There is a 1969 World Series champ that was traded for a 1968 World Series champ, and they both wore the number 47, and they were both on the mound for the final out of the championship game. It's a little bit of a trick question, but does anyone have the answer? Sal should know this because of his love of baseball cards, because it's the only time I think the one of the pitchers appeared with that number on a jersey somewhere.
It's not a Roscoe, is it?
That's one of them. He was on the mound for 86, but
Right.
Who was Jesse traded for?
Jerry Kuzman.
That's right. Jerry Kuzman, final out, 69. Jesse Orozco, final out in 86. And take a look at Kuzman's 69 baseball card, the one where he's like he's wearing a number 47. 47 was a spring training number. It's crazy. Crazy. So we'll see. I mean, but listen, 5 years from now, we're going to take a look and see these guys come up, whether it be Gilbert or Acuna and all these guys that we got in these trades and say, Epler did a pretty good job. So any other thoughts before we go tonight?
When you talk about the trades, look at how the Cano trade worked out, right? Kelenic is on the Braves. He didn't do anything in the spring.
Right.
And can't give up. Crow Armstrong is going to be a painful because that kid's going to be.
But we even spoke about that. We've spoken about that for years. A prospect is, the prospect you can also say is a suspect. You never, listen, Sean Abner. You would have been happy to get a bag of balls, in retrospect, in a trade for Sean Abner. Okay, I mean, but he was or F-Mart. We had so many of these guys that were top prospects and they never panned out. So listen, Kelenic, third organization and doesn't look like he's gonna make it there either. And you got Edwin Diaz, and everyone was ready to get Edwin Diaz out of town. And when we spoke here or wherever it was, when we were on the radio show, I said, listen, at that point, A, no fans in the stands, no adrenaline. B, the seams were lower on those baseballs, and you can't throw a good slider unless there's the raised seams to be able to get the spin rate on his slider. Fans come back, seams are back. Edwin Diaz is lights out. Hopefully he'll be good this year. He looked good. Senga was throwing in the outfield today, second day this week. He's on an every other day. He'll start ramping up. JD Martinez got in, I believe. Carlos Mendoza told us he got 12 at bats against Adrian Hauser. Adrian Hauser's down, rehabbing down there. Not rehabbing, I guess he's getting ready because of the way the rotation is. So they kept him back there so he can get a couple of innings in. They didn't say what he did in those 12 at bats, but he's still getting at bats. So he's a couple of weeks away. DJ Stewart got the final roster spot. They kept him because he felt for his versatility. He can play the outfield, he can play first base, and his pitch selection. That's why they kept him for now. I'm sure, when JD comes, he has options, he'll go down. Listen, this is what we love about baseball. This is, and it's my favorite saying. You can't binge watch. You can't fast forward baseball. You can't binge watch it. You got to let it play out day after day after day. And that's why at this age, we all still love it because, one day is going to be aggravating. The next day it's going to be unbelievable. And then you go on a run and then you're going to go on a losing streak. But I will say this, listen, there have been teams in the past, no matter what this team has been, wins loss record over the last 5-6 years, these have been likable teams. We've had some losing teams that were just not likable. You gotta love like guys like Nimmo, you Lindor. These are guys, Alvarez. These are good guys. So I think this could be a fun season. If not, we're going to be like we were in weeks 24, 25, and 26 last year. We'll find some stuff to talk about. But I just got to give you guys thanks. You guys have been with us since the beginning. The Facebook group has been growing. And I know you guys just as well as I am in a lot of different Facebook groups. And there's a lot of them that are no longer being administered. So there's a lot of spam and a lot of ridiculous articles being posted. We're trying to keep that stuff out, and so far we've been lucky. We're getting close to 3,000 people in the group, and you guys are great with how you get some of these. Like even after I do them, I forget who they are, and I have to go back and look to see who I put together. You guys have been great at that, so it's been a lot of fun doing that. The time machine is been fun. Putting together those because you guys also. I originally was just going to put full games. You guys said no, just highlights, and picking out highlights out of certain games has been a blast. And listening to the Seaver 19 strikeout game, the last 9 strikeouts, and just hearing Lindsey Nelson and Bob Murphy and Kiner again, it's great stuff. So I'm enjoying this. I hope you guys are having as much fun as I am. You guys are always great in the chat room, so I appreciate it. And
Mark, when are you going to come out with the line of clothing? I see you got your own KINER'S corner hoodie.
Well,
when
I have to
that up for sale?
It's funny that you should say that. Well, first of all, listen, it's one of the things. So I'll give you a peek behind the curtain. So at the beginning of the year this year, we had a staff meeting. And, you guys know, I've been at this stuff for Sal and I did radio together back in 1978. When Sal, Joe Morgan knows Sal is SAC. We have a station ID that goes, when I'm not playing for this is when Morgan was on the San Francisco Giants. The station ID went like this. When I'm not playing for the San Francisco, no, whenever I'm in town in New York, I'm listening to Rich O, which is my friend Rich O'Connor, Rosie, and Sack. My C looked like my L looked like a C, so he called Sal Sack. So it was the worst station ID. We had to edit out. He just listens to Rich O and Rosie. There was no Sack. But yeah, we've been doing it a long time. So we had a staff meeting, and we said, listen, we were knocking our heads. We were saying like, oh, we got to be on TikTok. We got to be on Instagram. We got to be here. We got to be there. And last year we tried all that. And I came to the realization that we're not doing this to get rich. We're not doing this to make money. We're doing this because it's our passion. And that's why we feel we are successful at what we do, because, people feed off that passion and they give that passion back. So I will not sell stuff. I don't want to make money.
I'm not asking you to make money. I'm asking because I want a hoodie.
but wait, I'm gonna go one step further. So I've gotten into Stratomatic like in a big way again. We played it during the pandemic via Zoom. It was good in the first couple of weeks of Zoom, but it just wasn't the same when you're playing face to face and you have the dice in your hand and you're looking at the card and say, oh, I need a 1 column or a 2 column. So once the pandemic ended, we got back into it, and now like I'm actually the head of the Long Island Stratomatic Club. We had 8 teams last season. We're in our playoffs of that season. We've now expanded to another 8 teams. So we have 16 teams that play at the Long Island Welcome Center every Tuesday night. There are like 25 guys playing Stratomatic baseball. But since I'm in all these different Stratomatic groups, we posted a picture on TeePublic. I made different logos for every team, and we all had our sweatshirts with our teams, whatever. Guys from a Kansas City league contacted me and asked me if I could make them jerseys. So I made jerseys. Evidently, one of the teams in our league is the Scorpions, and evidently the logo I made using AI, the actual band Scorpions said that it was copyright infringement, and they took that down. I did another one, and then they didn't tell me why. They took the whole site down. So I will put another one. Listen, I know no one's, because we actually trademarked KINER'S.com, and it says .com. And Steve Kiner is in our group, so I know if he had any issue, he would tell us. But I'll open a new store, and listen, we don't make any money on them. If you want a hoodie, you'll order it. It'd be great for you guys. I'd love for people, because you know what? Whenever I wear it, like I have a T-shirt, and when I play pickleball, people, KINER'S Corner, that was my favorite show, and we get new viewers and listeners that way. So that's good. So yeah, I have to go back and see if I can reload, because I asked them what was the thing that was, they might not allow AI art to be used. That could be it. I'm not sure. But they never gave me an answer, so I don't know. And that's it. So I will say this: I have been on a quest now. To try and find people that used to tape, Met games in the 70s and 80s. Because right now we're up to 49 episodes of KINER'S Corner that I've been able to find and archive and put up on the site. I'd like to get up to 100. I'm sure there are people that have them out there. There are different tape trader clubs out there that I've posted. There used to be these different sites that were just VH. Like if a guy was in New York and had to move to San Diego for work, they used to be on Yahoo groups and things like that, tape traders. And the person would say, listen, I'll send you 10 VHS tapes. Please tape the Met games. I'll pay for postage so they could, because back in the day, there was no satellite TV. There was no, there's no Major League Baseball network. The only way you could be able to see Met games were for videotapes. So I'm sure they exist. I just have to find the right market. So if you guys ever speak to people and find out, because I don't have anything pre-1980, and believe it or not, whoever was on the show last week when Alan's Y Bell was on, and we talked about the George Carlin episode, he gave me Kelly Carlin's email. I sent her an email. We went back and forth. She doesn't have a copy of it. She wasn't even aware it existed. but it was very cool, like for me to like just be corresponding with it. It's crazy, you know. I speak to Lindor and all these people, but like when you speak to, and she's not George, she's Kelly Cullen, but still, it was a thrill for me. It's crazy. So, but as always, guys, thanks so much. Have a good night. Enjoy Friday. Anyone going to the game Friday? Oh, all right. For hopefully innings 1 through 3. Look right next to the dugout. I'm gonna go in the photo well, because that's the other, like, this for some reason now my other passion is photography now, and I've been able to get in the photo well and trying to get some good pictures for the site. So if you go to the site, there's a whole photo tab now. So there's like little I took 300 pictures, only 37 of them were like what I felt were good. It's like not, but it's not a very good batting average.
One
But,
thing, Mark, one thing before you leave, talking to Mendoza, what do you think of him? I know that the players like that. That's
all
what
right.
I wanted.
Good question, because I will tell you this. Initially, the hire, I was like, first of all, the firing Buck, I was bummed. Okay. Then the hiring, I was like, really? Like, out of everybody, my guy was Eric Chavez. That's where really, if you were going to fire Buck, I felt you want a bridge, you want a guy who has the ear of the guys. You want someone, that, is Hispanic and can relate to some of the players. He spoke Spanish. But when I was down in spring training, all that went out the window. This guy talks to everybody. He's upbeat. He's the only manager I've ever seen that throws BP and hits infield. I was like, oh my, the guy was like the Energizer Bunny. He was full of energy. Everyone, granted, it's a day before opening day today, so everyone's smiling. But even in spring training, everyone was upbeat. It was, last year, the drills were I wouldn't say army-like, but they were more like drills. Granted, that's what baseball players do, but there's got to be an air about it too, that you're getting your work in, but it's not arduous. It seemed like some of the like one of the drills, and I'll never forget this because I streamed it live, and a couple of ex-Mets said, "This is effing ridiculous." They were in Port St. Lucie in the main field, and they were piping in music as loud as can be and calling the ball. So the whole exercise was not only yelling, but like with your hands calling a guy off. And Buck, he's a guy that likes to check every box and go over every fundamental. And a couple of the major leaguers who had, commented in the live feed afterwards, I went back, I go, why are you so he goes, why are they wasting time? He says, every major leaguer knows how to wave their hands and call off a ball. This is ridiculous that they're spending time doing this. And, you think about it, and they all do know how to call off a ball. And so, I don't know, it just seemed the use of time was really, as good as Buck was, he had his things that he wanted to teach. I think this was more just, they were broken up into groups. I don't know if you guys saw, I posted, one of the coaches took like the pitching machine, hooked it up in the air, had it on slow, so like the balls were going just far enough out of reach of the outfielders, and they had their back to the machine, and he would say go, and they'd have to run, track the ball, and go get it. This was all going on while infield was taking place, so there was a lot of use of time. And when you guys see batting practice, it's just that's the one thing that boggles my mind with all the technology and everything that's come so far. Batting practice and infield practice is the same as the 1952 Dodgers. It's like ridiculous. They stand out there, they shag fly balls, they hit, right field, center, bunt, right field, left field, the KB baseball, get them over, get them in. It's 1958. It's like nothing changes, but
they don't bunt now.
Right. But I've been impressed with him. But again, now we have to see in-game decision. And how much is gut? How much is it the book that the analytics department gives them? That's where the road hits the pavement, or the tires hit the pavement, right? You have to see, what does he go with his gut, or is he going to go because he's a first-year manager, afraid of ruffling some feathers, and go against the book? You know, that's where the managers are made. And again, love Buck, but here's my knock against him. And I'll say this, you know, Buck needed to go in. Buck needed to have a little Wally Backman in him. Buck needed to say, hey, listen, you hired me to be the manager. I don't care if you think Daniel Vogelback is the guy. He's not my guy. I'm not playing Daniel Vogelback. Either fire me or let me do my job. And at that point, then we'd know the true story. Because if Buck was fired at that point, he could say, I got fired because I'm not playing. I don't want to play this guy. And I was forced to play this guy. Instead, he played him, lost, and still lost his job. So, you know, that's what I feel.
Okay.
You know. All right, guys. As
All right,
always,
man.
let's go Mets. All right.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mark.
everyone. Have a
Thanks.
great
Bye,
night,
bye.
guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I just hope that they're not assuming that, well, okay, end of the year, we're just gonna outbid everybody and Pete's coming back. Because as the season goes on, he could feel not loved. You know, we've seen that before. As long as Pete still loves New York and the fans treat him right, the problem is if they get out of it, he's gone in July. If the Mets are toast, which would be bad, you know, unless they make a side deal. Pitching, I worry about it a little bit. It's stronger than what it was. I like that part of it though. But JD, I would have liked to have seen them get JD. I mean, I understand the other part of it, but just having a little more in that lineup that's a given, I think would have felt better.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if they went and signed him and used a platoon of Vantos and Batty at third, okay, or you know, got one of them some at bats. Listen, I either way would have been fine. I just don't think it was a necessity, and I agree with you. The problem with Pete is you're right. Come July, you know, but in the same respect, you didn't have that issue. Well, you did actually, because they were out of contention when Nimmo was same situation. And I think I don't know if they will trade Pete, because I think if they do have sights on him being re-signed, if they trade him, then they'll never re-sign him.
Right.
So that will be interesting. That's the headache you run. But listen, the Yankees were able to navigate it with Judge, and he went out and had his greatest year ever. So let's see what Pete does.
Yeah.
Stevie, any thoughts before we go?
You know, the lineup, you look at 2022 versus 2023, obviously there were the rule changes, but I mean, overall, 2023 was just a down year for most of the guys in that lineup. So to me, law of averages tells you that it's got to be better this year, just based on that. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's another thing, and I did bring this up a number of times to the guys, and I didn't expect them to say any different, but I think having Eric Chavez back as the hitting coach cannot be, overlooked.
Yeah.
I did ask that last year, like the adjustment to a new hitting coach. Yeah, and they both said, well, they're both on the same page, they're both the same staff, but I think Xavi has a great relationship with these players. That's one of the reasons why I was a big champion for him to be maybe the manager. I'm glad he's still on staff. I think that's going to be a big difference. You're right. Pete's not going to hit 220. McNeil's not going to hit 45 points below his, career average. Marte is going to be in there full time. Lindor is going to be Lindor. I agree with you. And a full season of Alvarez, you're going to get a lot of home runs out of him. You're probably not going to get average, but listen, third base was just between, the beginning of the year with Escobar just having his struggles. But then again, you did get big numbers out of Tommy Pham, who's still a free agent, right? I don't think anyone signed him this week, did they? Yeah, it's unbelievable. But that just also shows you what type of guy he is in the clubhouse.
That's like Dodgers screwed up everybody. Creating a market that was so artificial. Really, that contract should not have been allowed. It's just ridiculous. 68 million a year after 10. Where are the Dodgers going to be then? Who's going to own them?
Right, because now nobody wants to give Snell or Montgomery those ridiculous.
Well, they think that, I deserve that.
Right.
Yeah.
Their sites are off the chart.
Ridiculous. And you know what? We've seen it. You can pay everyone everything. It doesn't guarantee wins. We know that firsthand. So it's gonna listen. That's why baseball is great. You never know. But what you said, Steve, is when you said law of averages. To me, the law of averages has to eventually come. It's got to catch up with the Braves and the Phillies at some point. At some point, guys on their team are going to have down years, but it just has to. So this could be the year. I'm not delusional. I don't think we're winning the division. But I think we'll contend for a wild card. I really do. I think we'll be there. I think we'll be competitive. I think there'll be fun baseball. And sometimes with lower expectations, it's more fun if they exceed those expectations. So I know I'm always the optimist, but you got to love baseball. This is why we do it, right? This is it, guys. Next Wednesday, season preview show. Have a great night, guys.
Take
Thanks.
care. Good to see you.
Bye-bye. You
Bye.
got it. Bye.
Bye.